Good to see Chiandri in that group, and it's good to see that out on the course, Phil, that the sun has come out just for a little while to give the riders some decent morale, but it is very, very wet here at the finish line at the moment. This is the second group on the road, and the time gap is coming down all of the time. It's now down to just 50 seconds, but I think everybody now just trying to take an assessment of how the race has developed. We would like to be able to go back a little bit further just to see the position of some of the big names like Van Petegem and Andrea Taffy. Taffy having bad luck in the early sections of cobblestones. His bike has been slipping and sliding all over the place. And I must say, I was very interested to note how careful Johan Museo was at the start of this morning, Phil, because he was actually making sure that he checked all of his tire pressures. He had obviously received the phone call from up in Belgium to say that the weather, the bad weather, was coming down from the north, and he let out a couple of bars out of those tires. Now, these guys, on a day like this, when they know the weather is going to be bad, they will have the tires very soft indeed. They will run them at about 5.5 to 6 atmospheres, which is certainly almost the point where you can bounce them on the rim. But if you are riding well over the cobblestones, like a man like Museo does, that's not really that much of a problem.
Latest gap slipped slightly to 59 seconds there on the leading group of Hans de Klerk, Cassani, Matan, Schweder, Hoffmann, Boonen and Van Heeswijk.
Hello, I'm Joe Plankard. You're watching World Cycling Productions.
Town of Orchy, and this is where we head to the next sector of cobblestones, and it's going to be a very difficult sector, this one. It used to be one of the most feared sections, and they're still raining at Roubaix, and they zigzag around the countryside. They're not that very far from Roubaix right now, and so I think they can be expecting the rain very shortly as well.
Well, the reason for that is because so many of the cobblestone sections are starting to disappear from the north of France. But some of the big cobblestone sections, like the Forest of Arenberg, have been preserved forever because they've put preservation orders on them. So that will, as long as we can see, stay as a part of this Paris-Roubaix bike race. This is the leading group right now. Nico Martin coming through the streets of Orchy, and once they leave, they've got about maybe 2 kilometers to the next section of cobblestones. But they now are almost certainly waiting for the group of Museo and the big names to come forward. They know that the race has exploded behind, and they know right now that the big guns are about to join them.
I think you're possibly right there, Paul. There's 7 riders in this breakaway. Possibly 8 riders have now got up here. I think another man has just bridged the gap, which is always good to see. And there are 7 riders chasing. This is a close-up of Tom Boonen, the sensation of US Postal, Belgium's under-23 national champion, first-year professional. I have to say he is riding like he's ridden as a pro all of his life. He's had 3 superb races this week with the Tour of Flanders, Ghent-Wevelgem, and again in Paris-Roubaix. He doesn't know the word to sit at the back and rest.
He doesn't. He really has ridden like a very experienced bike rider. But what's happening now is the fact is all of these guys are just sitting on the tail of the man at the front there. That was Nico Martin, because they all have a serious intention of men in the back group. Museo's got 2 teammates in the front there. Lars Mikkelsen has got a teammate in the front. George Hincapie has got a teammate in the front. So not too many riders in that leading group of 8 now, Phil, really want to contribute too hard to the work. They want their leaders to come forward, and they'll reassess the situation and the game plan.
Yes, and look at Servais Knaven looking very, very determined now. And again, Domo could suddenly have 4 riders in this breakaway once these 2 contact, and putting them in an enormously strong position. Johan Museo looking simply superb as he rides on here, drives on and closes down to within that 50 seconds of the 7 leaders. Well, it doesn't look too different today either, because the riders are just as muddy as we look down now at sector number 11 here to await the arrival of the leaders, which have now swelled to 8, and a huge crowd here as we skirt the edge of Orchy and into this very narrow section, the track leading to the Prayers. And here are the leaders now. It looks as though it looks to me as though it's possibly Van Heeswijk who's got himself onto the front. Tom Boonen, not a wise position to sit there at the back now, because if the riders do slip and slide, Boonen will be taken out with them. The rider in the yellow strip there is Team Coast's Ralph Schroeder. Had a great day out today as Ralph. And there's the flag of the USA, and George Hincapie is on his way.
Hincapie's not too far behind right now. The last time check we had was just 40 seconds, and this is a very long section of cobblestones, the Chemin des Prières. Max van Heesewijk is at the front there. There is Hans de Klerk. Next man coming through is the man from Cofidis, Matin, and sitting right on the back there is Boonen. But this is a very slippery, tricky section of cobblestones. You can see every now and again, if you just glimpse across to the side of the pictures, there are team cars who come out, and these are fairly unofficial team cars who are out there to try and look after their riders should they have a flat tire at a critical part of the course, because if you were to have a flat tire right now, you may well have to wait for a couple of minutes before your team car can get in to look after you.
Absolutely, and so they just pop in. It's not against the rules, by the way, so they send extra help out on sectors where they expect trouble. Well, the man that came across, and we didn't see him come across, is Laszlo Bedrogi for Mapei, so it makes 8 riders in the lead now as the pressure goes on, and 7 riders are chasing. Canavan, Museo, Rodriguez, Chandri, and Hincapie rather is there as well.
This is the second group on the road there now being led by Maximilian Chandri. A quick time check back to Andrea Taffy. He's 1 minute and 45 seconds behind at the moment, as we now join the group with Chandri, Hincapie, Museo and Canavan, the big names that we expected to see here. They've been given an official time check of 53 seconds, but I figure myself, Phil, it's actually inside of that time right now. There you can see the group, Hincapie there comfortably in 3rd place. And once again, the spectators here in the north of France coming out to celebrate this 100th anniversary of Paris-Roubaix, which really is very dear to the hearts of the people from the north, les nordistes.
Absolutely. These are the spectators who really know their cycling sport, and these riders are heroes to them, and well, they are to everybody that appreciates how hard it is out there today. 8 of them are leading at the minute, 7 of them are chasing. It looks to me as though Bedrogi, who's just got back on, is having a little bit of trouble hanging on in the Chemin des Prières. This is 58 kilometers from the finish now, and there's our traditional view from the horses as we watch the riders come over the prairies.
Very cold here down in the finishing line, but it's very hot, the racing out there, and once again Hans de Klerk is trying to open up an advantage over the rest, chased smartly there by Hans de Klerk, as Bedrogi really seems to be suffering on this very long, difficult cobblestone section as they come away now from the Chemin des Prières. Tom Boonen sitting at the back here, allowing everybody else in this group to set the pace making at the front. Matin is in front position there, followed by Cassani. So just off the front will be de Klerk and Max van Heesewijk. Max van Heesewijk, by the way, Phil, was in the leading group last year. He'd obviously been given the order again this morning to make sure that there were a lot of Domo Farm Freaks riders in that leading group that nearly always goes habitually in the first hour of racing at Paris-Roubaix.
Well, Max has chased and hooked up to Hans de Klerk as they come off sector number 11. Just a short sector of smooth road now, and we're 57 kilometers from the finish. And Van Heesewijk is a real danger today. If he doesn't have any bad luck, he will be my man to win the race, and let's hope it goes good for him. And that's the remnants of the 8, 4 or 5 of them there. So it looks as though Bedrogi's struggling again at the back, but he should rejoin, because when our next sector comes in about 4 kilometers time, which is the pavé at Auchy and on to the pavé of Bercy.
Quick glimpse there just at the side of the road. You might have seen that US Postal jersey. That was one of their mechanics waiting after the end of the section of cobblestones. All of the riders will know that it will be communicated to them over the radios just exactly where the mechanic is in the section of cobblestone. So if they do have a problem, then they've got the ability just to ride on the rim for an extra 100 or 150 meters to get to the position where the mechanic is with the spare wheel. There is Nico Matin. He will be very happy to be in this leading group. And a quick glimpse there of the man who, for me, has been a superb revelation for the US Postal Service in these one-day classics, and of course the 3 days of Le Panneau which preceded them. Tom Boonen, I think, will be a man that US Postal will be able to count on for many years to come.
Well, he certainly earned his rest, which will come after this race, because the young man of 21 gets a break, and I don't blame them for resting him, because he's had a wonderful 10 or 15 days of racing. There he is, sitting at the back, doing his job, hoping he will shortly breathe a sigh of relief with the arrival of George Hincapie. The gap is still closing down. Here's the composition of this breakaway. And the man missing from it just now is Bedrogi again. He's been left on the cobbles, but he should get back with a bit of luck. He's a very, very good time trialist, the Hungarian, as we all know, and so maybe he'll come back. Back to group number 2 on the road, and marshalling affairs at the front. The 2 Domo riders. To the right is Servais Knaven, to the left the ex-world champion and twice a winner Johan Museo.
George Hincapie is going to have to play a very seriously good tactical game right now, because I keep forgetting about Freddie Rodriguez. We just look at Freddie Rodriguez as being in the United States National Champions jersey. So when they do come back to the front, Domo Farm Frites are going to have 5 guys against 2. That will really put them in a superbly strong position right now. You can hardly see the national champion of the United States' jersey right there. It's totally brown, and brown from the mud, which has really come down over this last hour of racing.
Well, it's a very nice solid little chase group they've got going here, and that's Thierry Gouvenou, who has dropped back from the leaders, and he's coming back up again in the chase group. Well, Patrick Lefevre, he's going to be feeling very content with the way his team is riding right now. The Domo boys, they, as Paul has said, could have 5 riders up in the lead if it all works out for them, with last year's winner Servais Knaven right in the thick of the action again. Truly remarkable. We're looking here at the chase group, still working away, and latest time gap, Paul, is around 50 seconds, I think, still hovering around the 50-second mark, but there are a lot of passengers. We can see here Bedrogi has managed to recover once he's got onto the smoother section of road, and he's rejoined that leading group and swelled their numbers back up to 8. But the man who is sitting at the back there for US Postal Service is now basically just waiting to be joined by his leader, and I think that is also the same scenario for the 2 riders from Domo Farm Frites as well. They know that they're strongly represented in the group behind with Freddie Rodriguez, Knaven and Johan Museo, and they want the whole of the race to come back together. A little bit of a slowing down here, which I think will bring the leaders back together if they continue like this, with Nico Martin on the front, and that's Cassani reaching for his back pocket. And the man just passing through our camera was the blackboard man. It's a green board in this event, and they were showing the riders the exact time gaps and the composition. We're actually peeling across here the town of Auchy-les-Auchy as we head on now towards sector 10. 8 riders in that breakaway, so just to remind you where we are, we've done 207 kilometers of the Paris-Roubaix now, remaining some 53 kilometers, 10 zones of pavé as we're about to enter Auchy-à-Bercy. This is a nasty little sector of pavé, which I think might see a coming together of the 2 groups, but it's always hard to predict now, Paul.
It is always very hard to predict, and this next section of cobblestones, Phil, is very difficult indeed. The section known as Bercy is a section which in the past has always been very, very difficult in the wet and muddy conditions. We're looking now at the man taking up position number 8 in the leading group of riders, Laszlo Bodrogi, the Hungarian rider, and a lot of maneuvering going on right now. The Domo riders, I think, just waiting and wishing that their man Johan Museo, Knaven and Freddie Rodriguez would come to the front of this bike race. Hincapie's going to be put into a severe amount of difficulty right now. He thought he'd done the ideal thing by isolating Johan Museo a few moments ago, but that has not happened. In fact, Museo's team once again in Paris-Roubaix have come back to show that they are a force in numbers.
Well, Martin has tried there to liven this breakaway up. He has sensed that he's waiting now for the arrival of Museo. Hincapie, certainly the Domo boys here are not going to do any work now that they know 3 more teammates are coming towards them, and Martin doesn't want them up, quite rightly so. He's tried to incite a little bit of reaction, but it doesn't look as though it's had much success. And now they're having a chat at the front, the 2 riders there from Big Mat and Cofidis. Here we are back with chase group number 2. Fred Rodriguez riding alongside team captain Museo. Stefan Visser driving through there. Max Shanley reaching for food in his back pocket. And George Hincapie for the moment having a little bit of a breather at the back.
Shenry looking as if he's actually just come out from a day in the park, because he's the only guy who is not dirty at all. Yeah. I think he's probably taken off his over jacket there just to make sure that in this part of the course he doesn't overheat too much, but he's looking very smart right now, and if I was to pick a man who looks the best in this group, I have to say Shenry is looking superb right now. Do you know, at the front, though, Nico Martin is not going to get any help from the other guys in the break because they want the race to come back together right now. And the best thing that George Hincapie can do is try and blow the race apart as soon as possible to isolate Johan Museo once more.
Well, this is going to be an intriguing last hour of racing in Paris-Roubaix. Here we are onto this pavé section number 10 now, which leaves us some 52 kilometers from the finish. And it is Hans de Klerk driving on. And they've got a few help here now because Martin is also there. And again, immediately, Bodrogi is in trouble. He really has grown to hate the pavé here today. And it looks like this time he may lose too much ground, Paul, but he would stand a reasonable chance of coming back with the chase group.
It looks as if everything has gone out of Laszlo Bodrogi here. No sight, no sound. And this is what happens when you really blow on the cobblestones. You see the front end of his bike there is bouncing as if it's hitting every cobblestone that there is out there. And that is, once your power has gone, you just don't seem to be able to float over the cobblestones as the big men do who have the superpower. And in fact, he's lost it completely, and that's going to cause a bit of chaos behind, because I don't think the Museo Hincapie group is too far off the back of this car containing the race referee.
No, this is the danger, of course, on these stretches when the cars stop and block up the route, because they must be coming up at quite a first speed now. And poor old Laszlo is in all sorts of trouble here now. It's not so much a mechanical as his legs are no longer part of his body, I think. He has blown to the world. It's been a long, long time in the lead for him, with 52 kilometers still to ride. They got away after 31. This has been a long breakaway for the Hungarian, and I think he's feeling like he's had enough. And there's the group come through, so they've got him. He's gone through, and that's the Hincapie group going on.
He's obviously not enjoying his Paris-Roubaix at the moment. But when the lights go out, it really is almost impossible to keep your bike in a straight line on those cobblestones. And you get an idea now just how close behind Johan Museo and Georgi Hincapie are. It's still Martin on the front for Team Cofidis of France, and he's the man basically who has to keep setting the pacemaking, because he doesn't have any friends in this group right now, because nearly everybody here is going to get caught in a few moments' time.
Well, very soon we're going to have 14 riders in the front of Paris-Roubaix. Sadly, one will not be Laszlo Bodrogi, but George Hincapie will be there.
Nico Martin at the front of the group, but now Johan Museo on this section of cobblestones is completely shadowed by Georgi Hincapie. It's almost a replay of last week's Tour of Flanders when the big names have come out to play. It's amazing the way this last few Paris-Roubaix have been, Phil, because the race has been decided so far from the finish line. We now probably only have about 20 names who've got a chance here of winning Paris-Roubaix, yes. And we're still over an hour of racing from the finishing line.
That's absolutely right. I can't see the others coming back on. Eric Zabel is one of the noted men. He's trapped in a group along with Andrea Taffi and Daniela Nardello. The last time we saw them, we think they are around about a minute and 15, minute 30 seconds away from the front group, but I can't see them bridging that gap unless they become rather inspired now towards the finish.
See how clever Johan Museo was there. He started riding quite slowly on those cobblestones, and he forced Hincapie to come to the front so that Hincapie would be the man setting the pace, making all over this section of cobbles. And if a guy decides to set the pace on a section of cobblestones, he can be on the front for over a kilometer of riding. This is the leading group now, which has lost one or two men off the back, including Laszlo Bodrogi, who just could not ride over the cobblestones anymore. And the man setting the pace, as he has done for the last kilometer or so, is Nico Martin, the Belgian rider, who certainly has not got any friends at all in this group, because all of the guys on his wheel right now, Phil, have got teammates in the group behind, and it's just a question of time right now until it all comes back together.
But they're making them work hard to bring it back together, especially Nico Martin. He is riding superbly and riding very well indeed, I think. Max van Heeswijk is in there. And there's Tom Boonen now. Look at his bike there, completely caked in mud. So this is Max. The other one was Cassani. And Ralf Schweder. Tristan Hoffmann also riding extremely well.
You can see Max van Heeswijk now also looking pretty clean, like Max Chiandri is in the back group. And the reason for that is he's taken off his thermal jacket right now to keep himself just around about the right temperature, because as we get into the tougher part of this course and the speed is brought higher and higher, riders are always a little bit worried about overheating, and they want to make sure that once they get to the serious part of racing, that everything is spot on for them.
The crowd's here running across to grab sight of the epic battle of the Pavé, as we're now on sector number 10. Matan pushing on the pace, but Tom Boonen taking much closer order now as he drops onto third wheel.
Only 5 riders left in this leading group right now, Phil, and Boonen is doing an absolutely superb ride to stay up there with everybody. With Nico Matan, the man doing all of the pacemaking on the front of this pack, I have to say once again, Boonen is doing a great job.
Well, thanks, Frankie. What a great manager Patrick Lefevere's been too, sweeping that podium 4 times with the top 3. The first time he did it, we thought we'd never live to see it happen again. Well, this is becoming a super pursuit now. We've got 7 leaders and 7 chasers, and they still, Paul, have not quite come together.
I'm quite surprised, and the only reason it hasn't come all together really is because of the work being done on the front of that group there by Nico Matan. It looks now as if this second group is starting to split up a bit. That's Johan Museo on the front, trying to put time between himself and George Hincapie. Hincapie has lost 4 or 5 bicycle lengths. Then it's Stefan Visser. The next man along there is Maximilian Chiandri. Going off the back of the group there was Lars Mikkelsen. And right now, Museo is the man who's trying to put the hammer down, but Hincapie's right on his wheel.
The man missing is Freddy Rodriguez. No sign of him just now, but Hincapie has gone himself right up there to Johan Museo. It says a lot about the American. He is fighting, and one day is going to climb on that podium, and let's hope it's today. He's again in the thick of the action here. Museo putting in a big attack. This is very typical Museo now. It hasn't worked, so he wants everybody else to come and do the work. Stefan Visser has come up, so we've got 3 very good men in the chase now. And I'm not so sure whether Lars Mikkelsen will get back. He looked to be going back quite quickly.
He looked as if he may well have popped just there a few moments ago. But after the Tour of Flanders, George Hincapie and Lance Armstrong actually sat down together, Phil, and looked at the videotape of the film as Chiandri comes back here. Armstrong went through it with George Hincapie and explained to him how he felt he may well have made a few tactical mistakes. And I think since then, he actually said to me this morning, the great thing is Lance spoke to me about just how great a bike rider he was and how he takes control of a race. And I think today we're going to see George Hincapie try and take control of this race in the last 25 or 30 Ks.
Well, Lance Armstrong back home in Texas today because he is taking part in his Cancer Foundation Ride for the Roses. And let's hope he's catching time to watch this too. George Hincapie, the rider who has 3 times made the top 6 in Paris-Roubaix, and you don't get an easy ride in this event, and George has always been an animator of this event this past few years. These are the leaders still being driven on by Nico Matan as we now leave behind us the Auchy and Berzé stretch of cobblestones. The group is now just 34 seconds clear as we cross the town of Berzé itself. The next sector of cobblestones about 2.5 kilometers away.
It's been a very long, hard chase right now, and I'm quite surprised that they haven't got across quite that quickly, but it's all really because of the work of one man on this leading group, which is now down to just 5 riders. Nico Matan has wanted to make sure that he delays the arrival of the big men coming up from the rear of this bike race. Enrico Cassani too, there at the back there, wearing number 2, has also had a very good classics campaign, and he is a man that the Domo Farm Fritz team has counted on a lot over the last five days of bike racing.
Well, we're looking down at Stefan Visser leading the chase here. 1 rider up ahead. I think he's now returning from the front group. Looks as though it might be Tristan Hoffmann. Is now coming back towards this chase group, which is still 4 men strong: Museo, Hincapie, Visser and Max Chiandri. And we're looking here now at the legs of the rider who has been doing very well today, Max van Heeswijk. Is still staying in this lead group of 5, but a very select little group it is. These are the last survivors of that 31-man breakaway, which went after 31 kilometers. Hoffmann now looks over his shoulder, takes quick account of who is in this group. It's a good one. I better get in with it, and let's hope he can hang on the back, because it could well be going back up to the leaders now. And George Hincapie and Johan Museo very shortly are once again going to be head-to-head.
Quick look there, you can see in fact Lars Mikkelsen did recover, Phil, and pull himself back after being dropped on the last section of cobblestones. They're pulling all the motorbikes out of the gap right now, and that will indicate to the leading group of riders that very shortly they'll be joined by the heads of state of Paris-Roubaix. Johan Museo right now must be feeling very confident in the possibility of winning this bike race for a third time. Maximilian Chiandri, I think, riding his best race at Paris-Roubaix over recent years. As we look back there to Servais Carnarvon and Freddy Rodriguez, we get a chance just to see where they are in the race. It is such a complicated race to cover Paris-Roubaix because there are bike riders and cars all over the place. And I have a funny feeling that Freddy Rodriguez and Carnarvon, in fact, as we look back there, Hans de Klerk has stopped at the side of the road. There's a problem with his machine there. He's actually getting a spare bike. The mechanic is up there and running very quickly. He's probably lost around about 15 seconds with that change, but he will very shortly be up and running again.
Well, I think he'll be okay because he was so lucky it happened when it did. A good stretch of road, a good bike change. I thought for a moment he was going to run to Roubaix, but he did wait for the spare bike, and hopefully he'll get back into the thick of the action. But back onto the next sector of Pavé now. This will be at Mons-en-Pévèle, 1,000 meters, and this is sector number 9. Now, can they all come together here? Lars Mikkelsen, as we're looking here now at the back of the rider Raphael Schroeder, we are with the leaders again. Tom Boonen just in front, a little bit of a traffic block ahead of the riders here. And one of the motorbikes has come down. That's the problem. Nobody gets spurred in this Queen of the Classics. You've just got to get up and get out of the way as fast as you can. And so the riders now are still at grips with Pavé sector number 9, which means that they are now looking at just about 47 kilometers to the finish. Well, Paul, we're looking down here at the composition of the chase group. We've seen motorbikes go down on this stretch of cobbles, Pavé number 9, and they've got about 27 miles to race.
Well, they're not far behind right now. There are the leading group of 5. It's not much more now than 100 meters. Georgi Hincapie very shortly will be seeing his teammate Tom Boonen. The big advantage now tilting back towards Hincapie because Hincapie has managed to eliminate Servais Carnarvon and Freddy Rodriguez from the group. They were the great allies a few moments ago for Johan Museo, but right now it's going to go back to a more manageable situation. It's going to be 4 Domo riders against 2 men from the US Postal Service. But the team doing a great ride here today are the guys in the yellow jerseys, the Team Coast, a new team really to the top of the sport of professional cycling. Schroeder is the man in the front. Lars Mikkelsen, a former winner of Gent-Wevelgem, is in the second group with Georgi Hincapie, and as he said to you, he really does believe he's got brilliant form at the moment. On the back there, 93, that's Tristan Hoffmann, who a few moments ago was in the leading group. One of the early morning breakaway of 31 riders who never really got themselves a huge time gap to be a serious challenge for the overall win today.
7 of them trying to make contact with the 5 survivors, soon a group of 12, and there will be new tactics coming into play here. But it is good to see Team Coast. They had a disastrous year last year. This year they've had a much better start. They've got a new management team there with Marcel Wust, the top German cyclist, had that terrible crash and had to retire. In fact, when he lost an eye, and I was chatting with Marcel this morning, I don't know if you realise, Paul, but he's had a perfect eye made, and you can't tell the difference. And he says, I've got 2 eyes, but I can only see out of 1. He's lost none of his sense of humour, but he'd be so happy today that he now has all of these riders in this front group. Whether they can win, I'm not so sure.
Well, Marcel Wust has always been a great bike rider, had an awful lot of professional wins, more than 80, I think, off the top of my head. And it's good to see him staying in the sport to offer an awful lot of the knowledge that he garnered over a very illustrious career.
Yep.
The junction is about to be made here, Phil. Stefan Visser not having the problems he had last year with those problems with his cleats when there was seemed to be as if an awful lot of dirt and mud had got into those cleats, but today everything seems to be on hand for him. We're now going to look at a reforming at the front end of the main field, and we will have 12 leaders once again, but an awful lot of Domo Farm Fritz riders. Hincapie can count on just one man, the man he's counted on since the 3 days of La Panna about 10 days ago. Tom Boonen, the 21-year-old Belgian, former under-23 champion of his own country, but now very much a part of the US Postal Service one-day classic riding team.
Well, this is now passing through the town of Mons-en-Pévèle, And this is where we now have brought 12 men together, and we're going to see a really fine last few kilometres now. If none of these riders have any further bad luck, and they've all had their fair share today, then we're going to see a battle royale, I think. There are still 8 sectors to come. The next sector will be with us in about 4 kilometres from now. I'm delighted to say that Max Schianri has made the split here. It's quite an international breakaway, this. Riders from Holland, Germany, from Denmark, and now we've got, of course, the American riders here as well. And Max van Heeswijk will be happy to see the arrival of team captain Johan Museo.
It's going to be tough over the next few sections of cobblestones, because those guys that have just been caught were part of that early morning breakaway of 31 riders, Phil, and I feel almost certain right now that the group that has formed at the front will split on one of these next section of cobblestones, because they want to reduce the numbers to make sure everybody keeps working in the leading group. Museo looking pretty comfortable there, with George Hincapie just behind him. Coming through now, Stefan Visser also looking good, and that's the face at the back there of Tom Boonen. Tristan Hoffmann is in this group as well, and Max van Heeswijk, he's the man on the back of the group here. He'll be doing an awful lot of work there for Johan Museo later on in this race, Paris-Roubaix.
"44 kilometres to go for the riders, and 12 riders now in the front. Domo well represented. Tom Boonen, the sensation, sat at the back now. George Hincapie driving at the front of the race at last. Now there's nothing between George and the finishing line except these 11 riders, and that's Cassani now, who's becoming almost unrecognisable. Going back to the cars here, this is Freddy Rodriguez. Last year's winner at the back is Servais Canavan. Hans de Klerk, with a bike change, remember, is slowly coming back up to the group, which could give us a very strong 15, but they've got a bridge 27 seconds.
Well, they may well do it. There's a long, straight section of road. It all really depends on how men like Johan Museo decide to ride. He may well try and back it off just a little bit and allow his 2 teammates to reintegrate the group. Once again, the balance turning against Georgie Hincapie, because if those 2 riders from Domo Farm Frites get forward, Hincapie is going to have a situation where it's 5 against 2. But maybe we've been backing the wrong American horse today. There's always the big possibility that Freddy Rodriguez is going to be the big American star to get onto the podium.
Well, a lot of people have fancied Fred for the win today. He is riding superbly well, and at the moment we're looking at the man who wears number 1, who won the race for Holland. Very few Dutch cyclists have ever won Paris-Roubaix. We've had Jan Janssen, Jan Raas a couple of times, Peter Post, who still holds the record of this race, but really a handful, that's all, has ever won this race. Henny Kuiper also rode it very successfully. He's also known how to lose it with a lot of bad luck as well. He's watching it today, by the way, not far away from where we are sitting. Now that's the gap, and we're looking down below us at Canavan, Rodriguez and Hans de Klerk after his bike change, chasing 12 riders in the lead. This is the front group now, led by George Hincapie. There's a nice close-up there as we look here. The big danger yet again in a race from Paris to Roubaix, and he said Bordeaux, because you know when this first began back in 1896, this was actually a training race for the great Bordeaux-Paris race, rather, behind little Derny motorbikes. Then of course it became very much a race in its own right, and sadly Bordeaux-Paris is no longer with us. We're looking at the action here now, right on the nose of this year's 100th Paris-Roubaix. And the riders are slowing down a little bit now, because now they're getting, they've got to think this one through as they're heading up towards the next sector of Pavé. And this will be Pavé number 8 at Mérigny. You wouldn't think the cobblestones exist in that beautiful setting, would you? But they're just around the corner. And at the moment, too, the rain has gone away again, and the sky, if anything, is looking a little bit brighter. So the riders may get a bit of a break as they come into this final 25 miles of this year's Paris-Roubaix. All started with a breakaway of 31. Now all of them have been caught by the top riders of the expected top riders, rather, at Paris-Roubaix. Stefan Visser, he was 7th last year, had endless problems with his shoe cleats. didn't sort them out in the end, and he was out of the hunt for the final sprint. The 19-second gap there is to the 3 chasers, Servais Knaven, Fred Rodriguez, the USA champion, and Hans de Klerk, who's had a bike change. And I don't think that Knaven's had any problems today, but Rodriguez has certainly fallen, had punctures, and de Klerk has had a bike change. As we race now onto pavé sector number 8, which leaves us 41 kilometers to go to the finish. Not too long, this one, at 700 meters, but a chance to see if we've got any weak riders sitting there at the back.
15 seconds is the gap back to the 3 riders, Knaven, Rodriguez and Hans de Klerk, so they're just about holding it right now. But this little bit of acceleration on the front from Lars Mikkelsen, there's in fact 1 or 2 riders slipped off the road there. It looked as if it was Stefan Visser, just had to take a little bit of deviationary action there to keep himself upright. But it really is a slippy section of cobblestone. In fact, de Klerk has crashed. Rodriguez has missed it there. Fortunately for him, that was de Klerk who just went down there. It looked as if Freddie Rodriguez survived. He was just getting himself onto the back end of the group there when this incident happened, and Servais Knaven too managed to keep himself upright.
Well, that's bad luck for the Belgian, and also for Freddie Rodriguez, because they're applying the pressure now. Meanwhile, here we go again. Move back to the front, and whenever the road becomes cobbled, Johan Museo gives it every ounce of strength he has left. Mikkelsen and Hincapie are trying to get on terms.
Johan Museo once again has come out here at Paris-Roubaix. He's put the hammer down. He was waiting for a moment to try and split the group, but he's caught everybody by surprise here right now. That was a very slippy section of cobblestones. He's obviously got his tyre pressures to absolute perfection. Lars Mikkelsen right now is a few hundred meters behind with Georgi Hincapie. Hincapie right now must hammer home and try and bridge the gap to this man, because otherwise he's going to fly.
You know, he's absolutely superb, but the fact is that there's nobody can ride the cobblestones like Johan Museo can, and this man just goes. He's 36 years of age now, and he doesn't talk of growing old, he talks of moving into his second youth, and this man seems to be proving just that at the moment. Winner of Paris-Roubaix in 1990, here we go again, this is how he did it, 1996 and 2000, Paris-Roubaix winner on the attack now. He waited till Lars Mikkelsen made the move, and then he went over the top of him.
Unbelievable, complete and utter acceleration here. We're now looking at 40 kilometers to go to the finish. That's going to take around about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes in these weather conditions and road conditions. But Johan Museo has gone out on the attack. He's got around about 15 seconds over these 2 riders, Hincapie and Lars Mikkelsen. But what an unbelievable acceleration, Phil, there by Johan Museo. He waited for Lars Mikkelsen to go to the front, not going fast enough, thank you very much for me, and he came tumbling up the inside and just opened up the throttle.
Yes, I'm not sure whether Mikkelsen will be strong enough for George. So the situation now, that attack has come at 40 kilometers from the finish. It came when we were riding on sector 8 at the halfway through the debut of the Pavé de Marigny, and leaving us 219 kilometers covered, 41 to go. Museo has left the group behind. It's a long way to ride to the end, and Johan will know that as well as anybody. A massive crowd here now as we move into the area of Pont-à-Marc, and it looks to me as though he's going to try and hold them off to the finish. So it's all down to the others now to bridge the gap, and I'm just wondering if they can.
Well, it's going to be very difficult, because Museo's got the advantage of, in around about 3 kilometers time, there's another section of cobblestones, and it's this section of cobblestones where Johan Museo will try and increase his advantage. Right now, it's Johan Museo on the attack one more time, and Hincapie seems to have been caught out behind.
Yes, well, looking there at Mikkelsen and Hincapie back in the group. They're going to have to reassemble, and they're going to have to call up Tom Boonen. Well, he's still up for it, and Boonen now has got to chase down Museo.
It's going to be tough for Tom Boonen, because he's been at the front of the bike race now for around about 220 kilometers of racing, Phil. He will have an awful lot of pain in his young legs, 21-year-old legs right now, and he's got to chase a man who is known as the Vlaamse, the Lion of Flanders. Museo knows how to win this bike race from any different combination, because he's done it before, but he has also ridden this kind of situation where he's gone out on the attack from an awful long way to the finish. Once he gets to the cobblestone sections, he absolutely flies, and he will know, because that group is 12 men strong, there'll be a lot of animosity in the group with no organization, especially when you know that he's got an awful lot of his own teammates in that group.
Well, he's going to rely heavily on them slowing it down now, because he decided to go very early. It's either a huge mistake or it's going to be the best move of his life, and he's not waiting for them now. I think in a race like Paris-Roubaix, it's like no other bike race. You have to sense when it comes your way, you've got to take your chance. And as we move now onto the next section of pavé here now, pavé number 7, which puts us on the Pont Thibault.
Well, right now we're looking at Johan Museo going first onto that section of cobblestones, but what's going to have to happen here is George Hincapie is going to have to take a serious move and control this bike race, because if he doesn't, Johan Museo will increase his advantage over the rest. This is the second group. The advantage of Museo right now, not very much more than 10 or 15 seconds. We can see on the front is Boonen. In second place is Georgie Hincapie. And it looks as if now Boonen is really putting his life on the line for his team leader, Hincapie.
Well, it's the battle now of Pavé Sector 7, 38 kilometres from the finish to the 100th Paris-Roubaix. Johan Museo has gone. His gap is 10 seconds now. And Hincapie has gone back into the group and tried to marshal his teammate Tom Boonen to counter the move. They're certainly not out of it, Paul, and in fact, I've got a feeling they're going to ride back to Museo.
They may well do that. Did you see the face there on Tom Boonen? He is riding at the top end of the international echelon. There's confirmation of the gap of Johan Museo back to the group containing Hincapie and all the other favourites, just 16 seconds. But Museo right now, Phil, is on his own terrain. He's on the cobblestones. He's using a monster gear. He's ticking it over. There are rumours around the peloton that today he decided to use 180mm cranks. Now that is 1 centimetre bigger than most cranks most bike riders will use. Boonen, look at that. He's been at the front of the bike race a long time. Hincapie looks very calm and very relaxed behind. Mikkelsen taking up. There coming along then is Cassani. Gouvenou is still there as well. Max van Heeswijk, Tristan Hoffmann. No sign at all of the comeback of the two other Domo riders. Freddie Rodriguez, who was almost in an accident before. Always, Phil, amazes me to see Museo go round these cobblestone corners, because you know what? They are so slippery, and the back end of this guy's bike hardly moves at all.
It is so fitting that a man of the stature of Johan Museo is leading the 100th edition of this great race, the battle against the cobblestones. Men like the Gitan, Roger de Vlaming, Francesco Moser, they were the stars, but if this man wins today, he'll have 3 victories too, and one's got to feel that that's the way history should be written.
It would be brilliant, you know. It's very difficult to know who exactly I want to win this bike race. Johan Museo has been a champion of the classics. He's the kind of man who's put in some brilliant performances in the one-day races, like Paris-Roubaix previously, like the Tour of Flanders. I'd love him to win this bike race for a 3rd time, but I'd also like to see Georgie Hincapie come up and be the first American to win Paris-Roubaix, because Hincapie, I think, has got absolutely superb form. Whenever we see him, Phil, whenever we look back to that group with Hincapie, he looks very relaxed and the legs are ticking over perfectly.
Well, gone from the group there now, Max Chiandri and the big workhorse Nico Matan. They've lost ground. Whether they come back, well, who knows? But this man has decided to break them up. I don't think there's hardly anyone now able or willing to help George Hincapie except Tom Boonen, and Boonen can't have much fuel left in his tank right now. Very soon, Hincapie, I think, is going to be isolated.
Well, he's going to have to do something special over one of the next sections of cobblestones. This is Max Chiandri just off the back of the group here. He was left behind a little bit on that group there, but you see you have to recover and try and get back to the group as quickly as possible. Chiandri's looking pretty good right now, and I'm fairly certain his dad will be watching this back in Los Angeles in his Italian restaurant. But I think they will all be pretty amazed by the work on the front of this group of the young 21-year-old Tom Boonen from Belgium, who is riding the race of his career so far for Georgie Hincapie in 2nd position.
Oh, sitting there at the back is the Max van Heeswijk, rather. And this is the man at the front. Just look at his face now. Everything committed here. Johan Museo. What a marvellous piece of riding it is. The crowd are roaring him on here. They're almost Belgian in this part of France. And he knows this road as well as any Frenchman. And he is giving it everything, every acceleration out of these corners now, as Johan Museo is heading towards a pavé sector 6 of the 26. He's running out of cobblestones and he's running into what he hopes will be victory by the end.
Museo really pounding a huge...
Oh, there's a crash, Paul.
Yeah, there's a few guys gone down there. There's a Domo rider gone down. That looks like Max van Heeswijk is on the ground. And this on one of the smooth sections of road right now. Let's have a look at the chaos there. Another one of... It's Mikkelsen has gone down as well. He was the leader of the Team Coast. A little bit further up, there's a red jersey there. I think that is probably Thierry Gouvenou, because at the moment we've still got Hans de Klerk behind this group. He never quite managed to make the junction. But this is just what happens. It seems like a nice piece of road. There's no problem at all. You come round a corner and boom, you find yourself on the ground.
Well, Max won't believe his bad luck, Paul. I was saying earlier, his whole season so far has been a story of bad luck. He's had the form and he's been in the positions, and now it's happened to him yet again. This is now Chandri, who'd only just contacted the rear of the breakaway. Tristan Hoffmann is waiting. Look how this is split up now, because way in the distance there, it looks to me like both the US Postal boys have gone.
It is. It's Tom Boonen and George Hincapie, and they are now riding a two-up team time trial. Unbelievable. The race is changing once again.
Well, there was the crash, and this is how it happened on a simple right-hand bend. That was a nasty, heavy fall for Maxi van Heeswijk. I think we can go up to the leaders here now, and it was Lars Mikkelsen who lost it. There must have been something on that corner, because Gouvenou went completely on his own volition, taking out Max and slowing down Tristan Hoffmann. All of this happening behind Johan Museo. His mouth is wide open. He's catching air and he's riding on towards a victory in Paris-Roubaix. Around about 20 miles to go, but the US Postal boys, they're on an airmail situation here now. They have not given up. And this man, Tom Boonen, is worth his weight in gold.
Absolutely brilliant. You can see the top half of his body starting to rock just a little bit now. He's absolutely burying himself. He looks across at his team leader there, George Hincapie. He'd said he wanted to support Hincapie to absolute perfection in Paris-Roubaix, and you can't get very much better than that. They are now trying to close the gap to the one lone leader, Johan Museo. The time gap is still around about the 20-second mark, but Hincapie's in a good situation right now. The chaos behind from that crash has left that group splattered all over the north of France, and Boonen, Phil, he keeps wanting to come back to the front. He's giving every last little bit of energy that his body can muster.
It's unbelievable. You can't speak highly enough of this rider. 21 years of age, his very first season as a pro. He is riding like this man, Museo, is coming towards the end of his career. And Boonen has got all of the responsibility now to plant Hincapie back in the lead. But because of the crash, they are freed of the passengers now. They've got rid of the metal balls round their ankles, and they're able to try and have a shot at Johan Museo direct.
Johan Museo, absolute powerhouse of a man. He's won the Tour of Flanders 3 times. He's won Paris-Roubaix twice. And right now, he's powering himself into a lone lead off the front of this group.
We are watching history in the making here now, at least for possibly Johan Museo and possibly for the United States, because right now Hincapie is in a podium position and no Americans ever got in the top 3.
And they've got a teammate in there as well. There is the time gap. It's 24 seconds from the lone leader, Johan Museo, back to the 2 chasers from the US Postal Service. But they are now going through the town of Templeuve, and very shortly, Phil, they will be coming up to the next section of cobblestones, which is a long section of cobblestones. And there, if Georgie Hincapie has got those legs, he has to do what Lance Armstrong told him to do last week after looking at the Tour of Flanders tapes. Take the race by the horns, give it to the opposition. Don't let them dictate the pressure of the bike race to you. You are the man who has to lead, and you are the man who has to dominate. We're now coming up to the next section of cobblestones. This is number 6. It will be the section of the Pavé de Moulin de Vertin, and it is a long and disgusting section. There is the Moulin, the windmill, which is turning round to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Paris-Roubaix. Museo is the first man onto those cobblestones, and 20 seconds behind him he should see the US Postal train of George Hincapie and Tom Boonen.
Now, this is a rather muddy stretch. It's only half a kilometre, but it is usually battered by the weather. As you can see, there's not much protecting it, and the surface itself is not the best. Here we go, over Le Moulin de Vertin, and in the lead is Johan Museo, the master of the cobbles, the Lion of Flanders, the king of the mountains. He's fantastic when he gets onto these stones. He just goes quicker, and I think this is where he'll knock a couple of seconds into these two US Postal boys. But they are superb. A massive crowd is out for this 100th. When we left Compiègne this morning, I think it was the biggest crowd I've seen in that beautiful city to see the Paris-Roubaix off on its 100th edition. And we're seeing the newcomers try to tame the old line, and I'm not so sure they can.
Well, they're having a hard time. The gap is staying exactly the same all of the time. You see, with a man like Johan Museo, you have to be on his wheel when he attacks, because when you give him 100 meters advantage, it is very difficult to nail that back. This is the third group on the road. They're around about 20 seconds themselves behind the group there of George Hincapie and Tom Boonen. That is Thierry Gouvenou in the group as well. You can see the Lamprey rider, Maximilien Chianri. Nico Martin is there a little bit further forward as well. But this section of cobblestones has really blown the race apart. We've got now, off the end of this section of cobblestone, 6 kilometers before we go to the very long section, the section of Sizouin. And I think if Johan Museo is still away by then, it's going to be very difficult for the US Postal guys to pull him back into the field, because he will feel more confident as he gets closer to the finish and closer to the cobblestones that he knows, the sections at Sizouin, Quinfin-en-Pavel, and of course the most difficult one remaining, the Carrefour de l'Arbre.
Well, there's still some 8 kilometers of the cobbled roads lying ahead of Johan Museo. He's now out of sector number 6, and he's well into his time trialing rhythm here. The ex-world champion, the man who has been the king of this queen of the classics on 2 previous occasions, he's been placed as well. And George now is free of the other riders. And remember, no American has ever finished on the podium at Paris-Roubaix. George Hincapie has finished 4th in '99 and in 2001. He's also had a 6th, but now he wants a top 3 at least, and he's in the finest position to get it.
Hincapie's teammate there, Phil, I really don't know where he's getting his strength from today. He's able to recuperate, he's able to come up and work with George, having been in that early morning breakaway. He really must be digging deep into his resources to try and find just a little bit more. In the group behind there is Max van Heesewijk. He went down in that crash just a few moments ago. What this group wants to do now, the group containing the Domo Farm Frites riders, is pull themselves back to George Hincapie. Museo now goes past the sign indicating 30 kilometers to go, 18 miles away from winning this race for the 3rd time.
Well, I know that all of Belgium will be willing him on. I'm not sure that most of France will also be doing the same thing, but he is a man now who is doing what we haven't seen for a while, that's blaze a lonely trail in Paris-Roubaix. Johan Museo being pursued by a Belgian and an American. So the gap, Paul, 35 seconds now to these 2 chasers as they too go past the 30-kilometer barrier. The remnants of the breakaway behind, but I'm not sure that they've got the enthusiasm left in them to catch up with these 2.
Well, it will be bad news for them when they start to get those time checks being communicated, because it's starting to stretch out. The last time check we had was 24 seconds to Johan Museo. It is now 35 seconds. Hincapie is very shortly going to have to make a very serious decision, Phil, as to whether or not to go out alone. He's getting a lot of help here from Tom Boonen. Boonen must shortly start to fatigue because he's been at the front of the bike race for a long time. Hincapie looks so smooth, so calm and so fluid in his pedaling action. He's very shortly going to have to make the decision to go alone in pursuit of Johan Museo if he wants to win this bike race today.
Well, he's 5 kilometers from the next sector of Pavé at Sizouin, and that is a tough kilometer length of bad cobbles there. And you know, every time he reaches the cobbles, this man seems to gain a couple of seconds. He rides them so well. He's taken a huge gamble going at 40 kilometers from the finish. He's been out front now for just over 10. He doesn't look like a man who's getting weaker, does he? They are the faces of the hunter and the hunted. And it looks as though George Hincapie is going to have to now make a big decision, like Paul has said, and have a real go to hunt him down quickly. The closer this man gets to the finish, then the better he's going to feel.
Huge gear that he's pounding there. This man has got so much power in his legs. It really is hard to believe that he's going to retire at the end of this season. And I think with a win under his belt today, he may well come back and see if he can't make it just one more win in the Tour of Flanders as well next year. Because when you've got the form like that, it's not worth stopping a career.
Well, win or lose now, Johan Museo can return to Belgium with his head held high. He's again be the man of Paris-Roubaix, and this the 100th edition. He's also riding so well this week. Just looking now at Johan Museo as the cameras pull back to the two chasers, George Hincapie and Tom Boonen, both members of the US Postal Service. These two riders are now mano a mano to try and bring back Johan Museo. We are 28 kilometers from the finish for Museo and 35 seconds further away for these two.
They're now coming into the town of Sizouin, and then they will have that very long 1,000-meter section of cobblestones, and I think it is there that Georgie Hincapie must try and bridge the gap up to Johan Museo if he wants to be the first American to win Paris-Roubaix this year. There are the two chasers, and round the corner and out of sight right now is Johan Museo. He knows this course to perfection. He will feel very much at home, and he will be lifted by the fact that he's opening up an advantage all of the time. The time gap there is 41 seconds to Hincapie and Boonen, and then a minute 14 back to the group containing a couple of teammates of Johan Museo and the French rider doing a great ride there, Thierry Gouvenou.
So the situation at the moment now, we are in Sizouin at 26 kilometers from the finish. We're heading now for sector number 5, which is 1,000 meters of pavé of Sizouin, the rough ones, and Johan Museo is going to see them first by just about that 35 seconds. Just look at his face now as he continues to concentrate. He never looks over his shoulder. This is where the bike race is right now. Here's a little word in his ear just to keep him hyped up, I think.
Good to see the man driving the car there alongside him. The man who in previous years has ridden so many of these one-day classics, Wilfred Peters. And I wonder what he feels like right now driving the car alongside the man who just a year ago was his team leader.
Yes, and working so well to help Museo win his race. That's Wilfred Peters. And Johan very sad, he says, but we all do grow old, and he misses the fact that Wilfred Peters doesn't room with him on the big races anymore. But at least he can be alongside him in a far more comfortable seat than Museo has right now. But he will have given him just a word of advice he wants to hear, saying it's good, you're cool, and you've got 25, 26 kilometers to go to the finish.
I think Hincapie right now has got to make a serious decision, Phil, because there is only 30 seconds right now between the two groups here, the group of Boonen and Hincapie and the group behind containing the remnants of this leading group a few moments ago. I seriously believe if he wants to win the bike race, he's got to go on his own right now, and especially once we get to this section of cobblestones. He's got to ride like the wind and see if he cannot bridge up the gap to Johan Museo, but maybe Museo is just too strong for everybody in this bike race once again.
He's demonstrating enormous strength today. And he's now into the town of Sizouin, and look at the crowd here. They know who he is because he's not very far away before he crosses the borders into his hometown of Belgium. And he's got himself a lovely rhythm. He's pulling away. He's added some 10 seconds in the last couple of kilometers to his advantage. 45 it is now. It's nudging out to a minute. You can see the roads are wet, but thankfully the rain has now gone away, and I think it might stay that way until he comes down to the finishing line.
Seems as if the clouds have lifted a bit and the blue sky is starting to come across from the border of Belgium here, maybe to salute a victory to Johan Museo. Where's number 6? The leader of the team this year wearing number 1 was Servaes Knaven, who took the victory last year. But for Johan Museo, he's coming up to this very difficult section of cobblestones, a 5-star section of cobblestones, 1,000 meters, and this is really where Georgie Hincapie has to try and nail back some of that advantage of the flying Belgian.
Yes, and let's hope that there's no bad luck for the riders too, because this race is never over till you've finished. There is so much can happen. As Kenny Kuiper, as Sean Kelly, Eric van der Orde, the big names of the past, as we get a little bit of problems on this sector of cobblestone here with our pictures. But there's the gap, 50 seconds it's gone out to now. as Johan Museo pushes on over the cobblestones, and the crowd are cheering him through. He's riding in the safest possible place, if there is such a place, and that's in the crown of the road, and he just flies over these cobbles.
He flies over these cobblestones, but in fact the year that Andre Schmil won Paris-Roubaix, it was on this section of cobblestones that Johan Museo rode to within 20 meters of the flying Russian on that day, and he couldn't bridge the last 20 meters, and then he blew up and went on to finish in second position at the end of the day. Hincapie and Boonen now are on the same section of cobblestones as Johan Museo, but these two riders still working well together. It's a brilliant ride, Phil, by this young 21-year-old. He's absolutely marvelous today. He's put an awful lot of effort in this bike race to stay at the front. He's only 21 years of age. He comes from Balen in Belgium, and he's actually leaving Hincapie behind at the moment. It is absolutely brilliant. This man was 7th in the 3 days of La Panne and 24th in this year's Tour of Flanders.
Well, it has been a sensational debut for this first-year professional. Whatever you think, he is a star of the future. Reminds me of the arrival of Eric van der Orden, his first year as a pro, and of course the great Eddy Merckx, two other Belgians. Real find he is. We're back with the leader now, though, at 36 years of age. This is Johan Museo. The waters part for him as he races this 1,000 meters. The next section of the cobblestones are 400 meters. They're all included in this sector 5, 5A and 5B. He's off the 1,000 meters and he's racing now up to the second sector. He doesn't look like a man about to falter, does he?
He doesn't look like a man who's going to crack. You see, when you get to 36 years of age and you've been a professional for an awful long time, you know how to judge your body, you know how to judge the effort, and that is exactly what he will be doing right now. He will be measuring his effort all the way up to the finish line. This man, let's not forget, turned professional with Greg LeMond's team ADR back in 1989, and he was one of those unbelievable bike riders who dragged themselves round the Tour, but since then he really has, Phil, become a specialist of the one-day classics.
And there's the Belgian flag to the right, French flags to the left, and an American and a Belgian rider parting the ways here. And they are riding to the limit of their ability right now. And I don't think they've got the answer to this rider, who's now on to the second sector of 5, which is 400 meters. Not quite so long as last time. And another little sector can be ticked off by Johan Museo, who looks to me to be heading for his 3rd victory in Paris-Roubaix. He's not making any mistakes thus far, but can George Hincapie fight back?
Well, he's come off that section of cobblestones there, Phil. Absolutely superb. The speed that he was going over the cobblestones, it seems to me to be faster than he's going on the good roads. He accelerates because he knows that's the area where he can open up his advantage. Very much like the climbers do in the Tour de France. They accelerate on the slopes of the hills because that's where they put the hammer down and create their advantage over the rest. 23 kilometers to go, but Museo today is certainly on an incredible mission. He was very upset at not winning the Tour of Flanders for a 4th record time. He wanted to do that, and now Hincapie and Boonen are losing time consistently as we continue with this bike race. They are almost 1 minute behind Johan Museo right now, and Museo is doing the ride of his life, and another proud moment for him, I think, when we come up to the stadium in a short while, because Hincapie seems to be a little bit weaker than his own teammate Boonen.
Well, there's more word of advice from Wilfred Peters here, as he will be told he is riding away from the two who are chasing, Hincapie and Boonen. If he keeps this rhythm up, he's going to win by 2 minutes in Roubaix, and what a way to celebrate the 100th edition of this remarkable event. He's still full of fight, but of course, Paul, there's still some really rough sectors of Pavé, and we would never wish it on him, but he will know, and he will not feel safe till they're all behind him.
He won't feel safe until he starts cruising down the road into the outskirts of Roubaix on that little climb out of Hem. If he comes there with 1 minute, he will know that the bike race is completely and utterly over. But there are, as you say, Phil, a couple of very dangerous long sections still to go. Section 4 to go at Canfin-en-Pévèle is a very difficult one, and it will be made even more treacherous today. There is the TGV, the Train Grande Vitesse, and today that is very much like the performance of Johan Museo, who will be happy to see that sign indicating 1 minute advantage.
Yes, that train can course at more than 200 miles an hour, and he doesn't go quite that fast, but it might feel like that right now. Johan Museo then heading into the last 20 kilometers. The face now of George Hincapie, caked in the mud of the day. It is now locally coming up towards 5 o'clock. They have been in the saddle now for 6 hours, slightly more. And an American, the hot favourite, alongside the other hot favourite, Johan Museo, are one-on-one with the great intruder, Tom Boonen, doing the ride of his young life.
Brilliant performance by this young man. He's digging deep. He's trying to help George Hincapie, but maybe the pressure of Paris-Roubaix has affected Hincapie today. They've not been able to keep themselves in contact at all with Johan Museo, who right now has an advantage of 1 minute. And the way he's riding, I don't think Lady Luck is going to bring him any ill luck at all, because when you've got that form, you really do ride well. You know, Hincapie at 28 years of age, Phil, really has matured now. He lives nowadays in Greenville, South Carolina, but in Paris-Roubaix, his performance has been absolutely superb. Last year he was 4th, 2 years ago he was 6th, in 1999 he was 4th as well, but he's always finished this bike race. It's absolutely superb. He started back with a 31st place back in 1994.
As we move here now to what is in effect the third group on the road, there's Stefan Visser, still fighting out for a high finish. He finished 7th last year after the trouble he had with his shoe cleats. Also in this group in Max van Heeswijk, although I think he's pretty hurt by that fall he had on his right side. Also Thierry Gouvenou is the leader of the big mat, and that's how he's riding today. As we look down here at a very famous name, Eddy Merckx, who's built this bicycle, and the very famous man is pedaling it towards Roubaix better than anybody else, as Wilfred Peters continues to advise Johan Museo. Well, a year ago, Peters was in the thick of the action at this stage of the race. Now he's in the car telling him what to do. That's
amazing. It really is remarkable to see Wilfred Peters. A great domestique, I think, for the team over many, many years, and a superb personal family friend of Johan Museo. It must be quite strange for him right now, Phil, I think, to be riding up alongside the man that he used to share a room with when the team moved around Europe. And I'm sure they still will go a long way together throughout the rest of their lives. But for the moment, he's doing a brilliant job as a team manager. He's keeping his man informed as much as possible. He's coming up alongside to keep the riders' morale as encouraged as possible. We are now out of the area near Sizouin, and very shortly we'll be coming on to the next long section of cobblestones. These guys know these roads so well, Phil, and what Johan Museo will be doing now, he'll be looking for a small white cottage on the left-hand side of the road, and he will know that is where the left-hand bend is to go into the 4th section to go, the section at Quinfin-en-Pévèle.
Well, that's a big stretch of cobbles he'll need to get out of the way as he goes past now the panneau, the sign there for 20 kilometres to go. 20 kilometres in the lead. He's still got to go the same again if he's going to stay in for first place at the finish. But the gap is stretching now quite dramatically. 1 minute and 21 seconds now to these two riders, who are clearly not riding as quick as Johan Museo. Tom Boonen can't have much left. He just can't. And it's going to be left now to George Hincapie, I feel. Looking here at George Hincapie, I think that he's also feeling rather jaded now. They've got to stick together, these two, stay in tandem. This is still a magnificent result. Two riders from the same team taking 2nd and 3rd would be a sensational result for US Postal, and in particular for George and, of course, for Tom.
It would be a brilliant performance, but looking at Hincapie's pedaling action right now, I think psychologically he's a bit broken there by that move of Johan Museo's. Museo attacked absolutely viciously when they came onto that very difficult section of cobblestones and opened up an unbelievable gap very quickly indeed. This is the left-hand turn. This is the one that Museo knows. This is where in the past we saw Andrea Taffy puncture coming onto the cobblestone section and get a spare wheel from a team mechanic who was positioned perfectly for his wheel change. But Museo now, Phil, is riding unbelievably over these cobbles, and he really does seem to accelerate once he gets to the cobblestone sections, because he knows that is where he's building up on his advantage all of the time. There are no signs of weakness at all in this man right now. He's superbly powerful. He's timed everything to perfection. His attack was a very good one, and since then he's done nothing more than build up on that advantage over the chasing two, Tom Boonen and George Hincapie.
Well, just watch him as he sits there, pushed right back on the saddle, holds tightly the center of the handlebars, rides the biggest gear he can turn. That's the most comfortable way to cross the cobblestones, and he just drives on. He flies over these cobblestones. Watch the wheels here as they jump up and down on the stones. You can see from the chain the rough ride he's getting.
This is a 5-star section of cobblestones right now, and this man at the front, Johan Museo, is absolutely storming away from everybody else in this year's Paris-Roubaix, the 100th edition of the Queen of Classics.
Well, we're looking now at people who are in a very advantaged position here to watch Johan Museo continue to push on to lead Paris-Roubaix. It's not going to be much further before he's got himself a lead of 2 minutes here. We are on sector 4 now, Canfin-en-Pévèle, and this is the sector which is a vicious sector of cobblestones. And if Museo can get through this without any problems, then I think he can really start dreaming of a third victory. He's showing no signs of slowing down, and he rides these cobblestones with the skill of an acrobat.
Unbelievable. You see his bike is hardly moving at all there. The cameramen are having a hard time keeping their cross motorbikes up in a straight line. But Museo has got the power today. This is a very dangerous corner at the top end, and this is the corner where a few years ago my best man Alain Bondu dropped his bike when he was in the leading group with Sean Kelly. Kelly went on to win on that occasion, but look at the time gap. I think it's pretty much all over for George Hincapie now, because this man at the front, Johan Museo, has a 1.5 minute advantage over the two-man chasing group, and at 1:45 now is the group containing his teammates Max van Heeswijk and the other man who was in there as well, Enrico Cassani.
18 kilometers to go, and he's just hoping and praying now he has no mechanical problems, no flat tires. It makes me wonder just how these wheels and tires stand up to conditions like this. There's George Hincapie and Tom Boonen still locked together. If Boonen survives this and takes a place at the finish, Paul, and then a breakaway like that going at 31 kilometers, so a break of some 230 kilometers, to me would measure with the time that Thomas Wegmuller was beaten by Dirk de Mol after a race-long break.
Who just happens to be this young man's team manager. Exactly. And the man who's looked after him when he raced for the Kortrijk amateur cycling team. Dirk de Mol has looked after this young man, and he's always expected him to come to the top of the sport of professional cycling, but what he needs to do is to look after him carefully over the next couple of years and not burn him out too much and not put him in too many big races, because after all, he still is only 21 years of age. This man, on the other hand, is 36 years of age. He had told us this was going to be his last Paris-Roubaix. He had told us this was going to be his last year as a professional, but who knows? I heard that story once before. That was back in 1996, and there you can see Hincapie having to get round that car there. In fact, there seems to have been a slight accident, and I would think that's the car of Bernard Hinault, and this is George Hincapie stopping at the side of the road, pushed on by the spectators. But Phil, once you lose your momentum, it's very difficult to get it going again.
Well, George is struggling here. That's unlucky. Obviously there's been a bit of a problem with the vehicles on that bad corner.
Well, Phil, actually, look here. In fact, that's Hincapie. This is a replay of what happened just a few seconds ago. Hincapie on the inside went off the side of the road and into the ditch, and he's now wallowing behind on the road behind his own teammate, Tom Boonen, and it looks as if sight and sound has gone out for George Hincapie. He just can't get going again. I think he's totally demoralized. Let's look at that again.
Well, this is a real shame here. All of a sudden, things gone wrong for Georgie Hincapie. Down into the ditch, thank heavens. It was a nice grass landing there for George. He's up and out of it, but now it is his teammate who's had such an incredible Paris-Roubaix, Tom Boonen, who is now again fighting out for a high position for US Postal. Now, he went away in that early breakaway as the watchdog, waiting for Hincapie to join him. It was all going according to plan. Hincapie was there. Now Hincapie is down, and that's a real shame. We're looking here now at George trying to get back.
Well, you can see there, this is the man who leads the bike race still, Johan Museo. He's going to go into the Pavé de l'Arbre right now. This is really, for me, the last difficult section of this year's Paris-Roubaix. It will be indicated 3 sections of cobblestones to go, but this is the last real hard section. He's right now almost ready to take that right-hand bend into this section of cobblestones. In this area around here, they call this the Pavé Bleu. They are blue granite, these cobblestones, and they are oh so slippery, 2.1 kilometers long. This is a 5-star section of cobblestones. It's categorized number 3A. There's another section after this as well, but Johan Museo now is absolutely flying towards victory.
Well, what a gamble he took, Paul. 40 kilometres out, going like that from the group. He must have felt at the time tremendously strong. These are glacial now. This is the area where people know that Paris-Roubaix over the years has been won and or lost. That's why there's so many of them here. But the Belgian flag's waving here. Remember, we're on French territory, but we're not very far from the Belgian frontier. And this rider, the Lion, is roaring again.
He's roaring again. We're not too far. 16 kilometres to go to the finishing line. And just look at the way he rides these cobblestones, Phil. He's got his hands right in the middle of the bars. The reason for that is to allow the front end of the wheel to move around just a little bit and find the smoothest line over these cobblestones. And in fact, if you can look closely there, you can actually see the front end of his machine is bouncing over the cobblestones. This man has still got loads of power left. He's got a couple of dangerous corners to negotiate, and then the long drag up to the Café de l'Arbre, the little cafe that only opens up once a year just specifically for this bike race.
He is working so hard here. His handlebars constantly correcting the slide on the back wheel because these cobblestones are totally treacherous now. Concentrating, pushing with every pedal rev. He knows now that he's on for the victory again in Paris-Roubaix. What a year to win the 100th. Now look at this. At the back here, it looks like Tom Boonen has been joined by... No, this is Weisserman catching George Hincapie. Now, can Hincapie get on the train? This is a great recovery from Weisserman. Remember, this is the rider, Paul, who last year had so much trouble with his pedal cleats.
He had a terrible time in Paris-Roubaix last year. The situation on the road right now is this man leads. The Flying of Flanders, Johan Museo. Second place on the road is Tom Boonen, the teammate and domestique of George Hincapie. He's around about 2 minutes behind right now. And then in third and fourth place on the road, it's Hincapie and Stefan Visser. But look at the state of that machine. It's absolutely filled with mud. And this man is just powering it along. Another difficult corner here. Watch him go round. This is the kind of corner where you can throw Paris-Roubaix away and absolutely lose it. I tell you what though, Phil, this man is gliding around these corners. It just goes to show the agility is still in that top part of his body.
What an association Johan Museo has had with Paris-Roubaix over the years. A race which nearly claimed his life. Now he's come back to beat it, conquer it, tame it. Say what you will, but this man is racing as if drawn to the finish by a magnet. There's no one going to catch him barring problems now because he is simply pulling away from them. Tommy Boonen is the most likely to succeed. Weisserman is inspired. He's come through the field. He's picked up Hincapie. He's split the US Postal Boys, and they've had their fair share of bad luck today as well. But thank heavens Hincapie has got up. There's still a chance for Hincapie here. He still could take second place. There's the time gaps. There's no way now they're going to catch Museo.
I don't think they'll catch Museo, but in fact there was only 7 seconds between Boonen, who we can see a long way down the road here, and then the group behind of Hincapie and Weisserman. But the Lion of Flanders right now, Phil, is picking his way up to the top of this course, and then he will have a small amount of tarmac before he hits another cobblestone section.
So Johan Museo sees the clearly now, through the mud at least. The road ahead to Roubaix is for him, but the question is, can he hang on?
Absolutely remarkable. This man is the man of the classics of the 90s. He really has dominated the one-day races. He's come up and won the ones that he loves the most. The Tour of Flanders, he wanted to win it a 4th time. It looks now as if he's going to win Paris-Roubaix for a 3rd time. And Phil, with the power this man has got right now, I cannot believe he could even contemplate abandoning the sport and retiring at the end of this year.
Well, let's not forget too that the World Road Race Championships are in Belgium. He's got to stay on for those now. It would be unfitting if he didn't. So Johan Museo steadily coming now towards the end of sector pavé number 3, leaving just a couple of stretches to go, and the main problems are now behind him. And indeed it was the man George Hincapie who went into the ditch. Rather a spectacular pile-up, and it has damaged now a podium position for him in this year's Paris-Roubaix. Let's hope he can do it, because he's got Stefan Visser for company now. This man though seems assured of a victory in a few minutes' time.
This is the unfortunate thing here, Phil, about this Pavé de l'Arbre, because you think you've come to the end of the cobblestone section, you get a small section of smooth road in the middle, and then you have to ride again. This is Stefan Visser, and I have a funny feeling right in front of him there will be Tom Boonen. but you can see the road conditions out here at this year's Paris-Roubaix. They are absolutely and utterly atrocious. They changed in just 24 hours, and probably not even 24 hours, because it was only this morning that it was announced the rain was coming down over the northern part of France. Visser has recovered quite superbly, because at one stage he was more than a minute behind George Hincapie and Tom Boonen. There is Boonen a little bit further up the road, and quite soon he will get caught by the flying German.
Well, what has happened then to George Hincapie, who was briefly with him? And that, you know, looks to me like the style of George Hincapie there. But if it isn't, then of course it is the other man, and it is Tom Boonen. So Boonen is coming back to Visser, who is making up for all of his bad luck he got in this race a year ago when he finished in 7th place. So in the end, it was not Museo who was having all the bad luck. It was indeed Boonen and Hincapie, thrown off the line by what appeared to be a couple of skidding cars, and now they have been put into a position that they are totally on the defensive, and it's Visser who could be coming up here for a fine 2nd place.
Well, it seems as if everything has gone completely upside down for Georgie Hincapie, and he will have a bitter psychological blow because of that. He will have felt that he was going to ride into a podium position when he was riding alongside his teammate Tom Boonen, but right now he is on the defensive, and if he can perform over the next 15 kilometers, he can still put in the performance that he put in last year and finish in 4th place, which is where he is on the road right now. But for Johan Museo, he took the race by the horns. He's totally dominated the attacks, and he's moved almost 2 minutes ahead of what will shortly be a new 2-man group at the back. Tom Boonen and Stefan Visser in 2nd and 3rd place at Paris-Roubaix at the moment.
We're looking now briefly there at Tom Boonen, who has just entered the pavé sector 3B at Gruzon. And that's a sector of 1,100 meters, but Boonen is being chased down by one man now, Stefan Visser of Team Telecom. The gap is 2 minutes to this rider, though, who's sailing to victory now in the Paris-Roubaix, the centenary edition, and Johan Museo can begin to dream, because he doesn't have much ahead of him now in the way of bad terrain, and he just has to worry about his form, and I think he shouldn't worry about that.
There's no signs at all of any fatigue there. Looking at the face of Museo, Phil, it's complete concentration. He knows what he has to do. He will know the final kilometers of this race to absolute and utter perfection. He knows he's got a couple more sections of cobblestones, but nothing really to worry about at all. All he has to do now is hope that there are no flints in those tyres of his, and he won't have any flats at all, or no mechanical incidents. But even if he does, he's got plenty of time to change and repair and make sure that he keeps riding this solo ride towards the finish line in Roubaix. 12.8 kilometers to go, over 2¼ minutes to Boonen and Visser, who will soon join forces together behind. But there's no change at all in the face of Johan Museo at the front. He's absolutely now dedicated to one thing, staying off the front of this bike race to get himself to the finish line.
Well, he's had some wonderful results in his career, but this has got to be the best. A total show of defiance, going at 40 kilometers to go from the line, and he's just ridden away from the stars. And remember, he had to fight his way to the front as well, and then show them all how to do it. Every time he senses that the speed is dropping, he jumps out of the saddle. How fitting after 100 years too. He's riding a bike built by the most famous name in Belgian cycling, and indeed in the world. 2:20 is now the gap. That's music to his ears for the ex-world champion. You can see the rainbow stripes to his edges of his shoulder, of his sleeves. That's what they mean. Now back down the road, our camera's a little bit covered in mud here as we come off the same sector of pavé. Tom Boonen looking over his shoulder. I don't know where this man has got his strength from today, but he has ridden the race of his young life as well. In the lead since kilometer 31. He's now facing about 14 more to go to the line. Stefan Visser, a great friend of the English. He's always worth a chat, and he always enjoys his bike riding. He's now looking for a possible 2nd place here, but that rider from Belgium, Paul, will not give up.
He won't give up at all. He'll ride his heart out right now, because this is an absolutely magic start to a career for a young 21-year-old. He has got the possibility of climbing onto the podium at Paris-Roubaix in his first attempt at the senior edition of this bike race. He will get joined very shortly by Stefan Visser, but don't discount him pushing Stefan Visser all the way to the line when it comes down to a sprint. I just keep my fingers crossed now for the young Boonen, because he certainly now deserves to climb into the top 3 places of the position at the finishing line. But for Johan Museo, this is almost a march of honor for this man who's had an absolutely brilliant career. Started off as a sprinter, a bunch sprinter in stages of the Tour de France. He won some of the most beautiful ones, the one at the Mont Saint-Michel, and of course the final one on the Champs-Élysées as well. But just now all he's thinking about, Phil, is riding down into the finishing straight here in Roubaix. He's got 2 more sections of cobblestones, but you can hardly really count them, because the section at Hem, although it's 1.4 kilometers in length, it's got a nice piece of tarmac to the side, so Museo should not have any more problems at all.
Well, Boonen is still losing. Another 11 seconds has been lost there. The remnants of the breakaway we are hearing is now 4 minutes behind Johan Museo. We've lost the location of Hincapie at the moment. I think that's probably because we've run out of mobile cameras here. And the situation is Museo, Boonen at 2:20, and closing in on Boonen is Visser. But Hincapie, we are presuming for the time being, is still riding in 4th place. Now let's have a look at this. 10 kilometers to go, 6 short miles to the finish now for Johan Museo, and the sun is beginning to come out. It's going to be a marvelous time when the Belgian comes home to win Paris-Roubaix for a 3rd time.
Stefan Visser has done an unbelievable recovery, Phil, because he's one of the riders who was caught out in a lot of mechanical incidents early on. He was also on the ground a few moments ago as well, but he's now slowly but surely ridden himself back into this bike race. He's looking at a podium position. He makes the junction there with the man who was in 2nd place on the road, Tom Boonen. Such a shame for George Hincapie, who didn't really seem to be having a brilliant day. He didn't have the legs to follow and bridge the gap up to Johan Museo. But Boonen has ridden an absolutely superb race right now, and he's got to dig deep into his resources, because he will, I think, now take 2nd position a lot more often in this chasing group of 2, because he attacked with the leading group of 31 riders just 31 kilometers into today's Paris-Roubaix. As we rejoin now a little bit further down the road, Georgie Hincapie. He's in the 3rd group on the road, and it'll be a chance for us to pull back and just see if he's still on his own or if he's in with any other riders. And in fact, he's with Thierry Gouvenou right now. So Hincapie has been caught by Thierry Gouvenou, who's putting in an absolutely superb ride. Another survivor of that leading group of 31 riders who got away early on to dominate this bike race. But for Hincapie, the dream of winning Paris-Roubaix has completely disappeared in the last 20 kilometers.
Well, it's sad, but it is this great bike race, and George Hincapie is now going to have to find if he can take on Gouvenou and claim the same place he finished last year, which was in 4th spot. And I'm sure and I hope he hasn't lost too much in the way of his will to get to the top in this race. He's had to take the blows at the most psychologically worst time of the race today. And right up front is Johan Museo, pulling clear of everybody on the roads of Paris-Roubaix today. Looking at the face now of Johan Museo, sprinkled with the mud of yet another day in this wonderful classic, the 100th time we've had this event. The situation on the road, Museo leading by over 2.5 minutes now. Tom Boonen in the pursuit of his life with Stefan Visser, and behind them is Hincapie teamed up with Gouvenou, and it looks, Paul, as though the gap for the 2 chasers now is nearly 3 minutes.
It's stretching all of the time. The official gap is 2 minutes 45 seconds. Georgie Hincapie is in a group of 2 riders just a little bit further back. He's in 4th position on the road with Thierry Gouvenou, but they are currently around about a further 40 seconds behind the men in 2nd and 3rd position. We're now going to come up to the penultimate section of cobblestones, 2 to go, but really, Phil, at the end of the day, this is the last proper section of cobblestones, the section at Hem, 1.4 kilometers.
And that's where we are now, just 7.4 kilometers from the finish. The sector at Hem, 1,400 kilometers. And then all that remains then is the little bit of cobblestones we approach the stadium itself. So Johan Museo, a gap of 2:45 now, and the rest of them are really out of it just now.
Georgi Hincapie, Phil, at 3 minutes 35 seconds. I think psychologically he's fallen apart after that crash there, where he found himself plummeting to the bottom of one of the dikes at the side of the road, going up all the time to the second group. Museo must be feeling music in his ears right now as he realizes, and there's Hincapie getting caught by Lars Mikkelsen, Tristan Hoffmann and the two Domo riders. There is Enrico Cassani wearing number 2, Max van Heeswijk wearing number 8. So basically for Georgi Hincapie, his big dream of winning today has gone out of the window completely. But at least for US Postal Service, they should almost certainly have a man on the podium, and that will be a man who had expected to work his heart out today for Georgi Hincapie. Tom Boonen, the 21-year-old Belgian, is riding the first Paris-Roubaix of his life to absolute perfection.
Well, George is going to have to pick himself up there, because it is very unfortunate. He gave this race everything today, and bad luck has stopped him in the pursuit. Otherwise, I think he'd still be up there with Tom Boonen, and probably Stef Visser wouldn't be. But that's the way this race is. This man did it right. He went out front, he attacked, he took the whole race on. It was a big gamble to go 40 kilometers out and some of the worst stretches of cobblestones left, but he did that, and while they've all faltered, he has just gone from strength to strength. Just look at his style here on what is a very ugly right-hand corner there on this sector of cobblestones out at M. But now Johan Museo is beginning to smell victory for a third time.
I can't believe the risks that he's taking, Phil. He's flying around these corners. He doesn't need to take those kind of risks and take the kind of risks to extend his advantage anymore, because he's almost 3 minutes ahead of the second rider on the road. But he just wants to build up as big an advantage as possible, because he wants to ride onto the stadium and enjoy his 1.5 laps here. And in fact, for the first time, really, the sun really seems to be smiling on Paris-Roubaix. This is the corner just there where he went through, where Henny Kuiper almost lost his Paris-Roubaix. He came round that corner so fast he popped the tyre off the rim, and it was absolute chaos for a few moments when he thought he was going to get caught by the root, but he survived. Johan Museo now is off that final difficult cobblestone section at Hem. He now is facing around about 6 kilometers to go to the finishing line. A small climb up through Hem to the top of the road, and then he plummets down into the finish for what will be his third win.
Pavé sector 2 now for the group here, riding for second place. Tom Boonen behind Stefan Visser. The sensation and behind Johan Museo, without a shadow of doubt, of this year's Paris-Roubaix. Boonen breaking away after 31 kilometers, and he's still riding for a podium place. This is Thierry Gouvenou here now, who was chasing with Hincapie, now back in a chase group of 6.
Brilliant ride by Gouvenou to be there. Big Matt actually had a superb start to their Paris-Roubaix today. They had 4 riders in that early morning breakaway of 31 men, and Gouvenou has right now managed to survive. There's a problem here for Thierry Gouvenou at the back. It's a rear wheel puncture, but the car is right up behind him to change, and very unfortunate. In fact, they've decided to opt, Phil, for a very quick bike change as we rejoin the Tête de la Course, the front of the bike race. Johan Museo is riding his long time trial here, 40 kilometers to go when he launched his attack, and ever since he opened up the first 20 seconds, he's continued to increase that lead all of the time. His lead now is approximately 3 minutes over Tom Boonen and Stefan Visser, who are in second and third place on the road, and Georgi Hincapie right now is in 4th position with a group of about 6 riders.
Just 6 kilometers to go, and trouble for Tristan Hoffmann as well. This race will not lie down, but it's all in favor of Museo. He's riding serenely towards the finish, while all of his rivals are having all sorts of trouble.
Well, this race is never over, Phil, especially when you're going over sections of cobblestones like that. But when the form is good, you don't really seem to have that bad luck, which the riders at the back of the race are having for the moment. Johan Museo had his bad luck in the early part of this race. He did have an early flat tire, but he got back into the main field very quickly with the help of all of his teammates. Now he's starting to suffer. Now he can really dig into those pedals as much as possible, but he knows he's not very much more than 7 or 8 minutes away from the finish line. 5Ks to go for him right now in the outskirts of Hem. A long drag up through the town here before then. He has a long cruise down into the long straight leading into the velodrome, and this man has dreamed about winning Paris-Roubaix again.
Absolutely superb riding, almost a 3-minute buffer now for Johan Museo. He can take a wheel and a bike in that sort of time and still arrive in the stadium in solitary grandeur. He is now about 4 kilometres from the finish, just a tad more, as he continues to course through the streets on the outskirts of Roubaix. This has been a fantastic demonstration by a rider everybody thought was now past his best. But one man didn't, and his name is Museo. He came here to win this race, but nobody thought he'd do it like this.
Nobody thought he would do it like this, and I think the Belgians might have done, Phil, though, because you know what? I have never seen so many Flemish Lion flags out here as there are on the finishing straight right now.
Indeed they are. The stadium now bathed in sunshine. How fitting for the end of the 100th edition of Paris-Roubaix as they await the arrival of Johan Museo.
I don't think any of us could have imagined yesterday when we looked up at the sky to see how blue and clear it was that this was again going to be a historic Paris-Roubaix. And I think the gods of Paris-Roubaix came down just to scatter a little bit of a wet excitement over this race.
Well, it's made a classic of a classic today. We're looking now at the race for second place here. Stefan Visser, his bad luck gone from last year. As we switch now to the rear of the third group, Tirigunu's had his problem. Kasani has also had his problem. The gap is officially 4 minutes back to this group now. There's George Hincapie, Lars Mikkelsen and Tristan Hoffmann. Hoffmann also recovering, and that's in fact Max van Heeswijk going through. He was a faller earlier on. Every one of these riders has had some sort of delaying problem in these last 40 or 50 kilometres of this race.
Every bike rider in Paris-Roubaix today, Phil, will have a story to tell tonight in the showers and the rest of the week when they go back and share it with their family and friends, because this has been a historic Paris-Roubaix. It's the 100th edition of this incredible bike race, and the man who always seems to rise to the very special occasions, Johan Museo. This man almost died because of Paris-Roubaix a few years ago when he crashed in the forest of Arenberg and split his kneecap into about 5 pieces. He caught an infection and had to be evacuated to hospital. Then after that, he forced himself back to the top of the sport, and it seemed as if everything was almost over when he was involved in a motorcycle accident. Again, kept in hospital and intensive care, and he fought back from that. He is one of the most incredible comeback riders in the sport of professional cycling, but he is also a very tough bike rider. He's a tough man, and he revels in these conditions which have come down and bathed Paris-Roubaix today.
And it's gone out now to 3 magnificent minutes for this rider, who's recovered from all of the injuries Paul has mentioned, to come back to win Paris-Roubaix, a professional since 1988, and he's now bringing home the 100th edition. It's so fitting that a rider of this stature has taken out this classic at the 100th time of asking. He's never faltered, he's never looked weak, he's ridden the cobbles with the confidence of a man 10 years his younger, and let's hope that Boonen and Visser can hang on now to fight out for second and third. The last time checked then, 3 minutes and 1 second, 3 kilometres to go to the finish. Nobody, but nobody now can catch Johan Museo.
He's got to be feeling very confident now. It's a big risk attacking so far from the finish, and he attacked 40 kilometres, 25 miles from the finishing line. A little look over his shoulder there, and the only thing that he will see will be the team car of Domo Farm Freaks, which is being driven by his friend and former very good teammate Wilfred Peters. Peters must be pretty nervous in the car. He must have been over the last 40 kilometres or 1 hour of racing to see and ride up alongside Johan Museo. That is the finishing place where he will come in around about 3-4 minutes time. The sun has come out and it's absolutely superb. The race came to town in sunshine, and that really is something we didn't expect a couple of hours ago.
It is absolutely on cue, the sun, the crowd. You can't get a bigger crowd into the stadium today. anywhere as possible for them to stand. They are standing there. They're watching the same pictures as you are on a huge screen in the center, and they just cheer every time we go back to Johan Museo. 2 3/4 kilometers remaining of 261 today. Just look at these crowds now as we race down towards the Entrée du Vélodrome, the entry into the cycle stadium. There's just one little tiny sector of cobbles will come in the last kilometre before they go onto the track, and they're just laid there really to remind you you're about to complete Paris-Roubaix.
What a brilliant performance by this man, and there's no question at all about who the crowd want to win this bike race, whether they're from the north of France or whether they've moved across from Belgium to witness the finish of the 100th anniversary of Paris-Roubaix. They all want this man to win because he is a true Lion of Flanders. He ridden today, Phil, like an absolute Trojan. He's dominated this race, and once he got that advantage, I don't think anybody was ever going to pull him back into the fold. And very soon now he will come into the stadium for the final time, and I think he will absolutely enjoy his 1.5 laps here of glory.
And well he should, because he's going to be feeling just so good inside now. The effort was all worthwhile. How he had the courage and the heart to attack with 40 kilometers to go, I don't know. But in a race like this, as he swings on to the Espace C Crouplante, which is the last 300 meters of cobblestone, you just must have gone on instinct. He must have known he had to go at that moment in time. So we're heading down now on this final little stretch of cobblestones. Then we will bounce to the right of them and race into the stadium. There's the kilometre kite, seen before by Johan Museo, but seen this time with a daylight of more than 3 minutes to the second rider on the road. Museo is about to enter the stadium, which has welcomed this race for the majority of its 100 years, to the biggest cheers, I think, Paul, we will ever have heard.
It's going to go absolutely balmy in here in a few moments' time when Johan Museo turns in, because the north of France is almost Belgium, and there are so many Flemish flags out here for Museo, and here he is right now.
There it is, onto the track, and he's gone wide too. Now steady on, Johan, because it's a bit slippery right there. Very soft from the rain. He's corrected that. This man of great skills is coming on to win his 3rd Paris-Roubaix. He's got time if he wants to equal the 4 of Roger de Vlaming. I don't think he'll do that, but that's not what's in his mind right now. He looks across the stadium as he gets a bell for the last lap. He will also complete this last lap because the other riders won't be on the track at the same time.
They certainly will not. Johan Museo has certainly not begun his celebrations right now. He will have finished Paris-Roubaix before the 2nd and 3rd place riders come in. Look at that, Phil. 6 hours, 37 minutes in the saddle. And for Johan Museo, he has wiped away the disappointment of not winning the Tour of Flanders last week. But Paris-Roubaix for a 3rd time, well, thank you very much. That'll do nicely.
Yes, 2nd last year too in this race, but 2nd to his teammate Kneven when it didn't work out for Museo. He left nothing to chance this time around. Wait for it now as he rides up the home straight. This is going to be the greatest moment, I think, of his life now, as Johan Museo has won Paris-Roubaix 3 times. The man who turned professional in 1988. He is the champion of the cobbles again. The Lion of Flanders roars once more. So Museo now has time out to watch the sprint for 2nd place. And let's hope it's going to be between Tom Boonen and Stefan Visser, because Boonen has been the other man of this race today.
Well, Tom Boonen has done a great ride out on the course, but the man who is celebrating in the centre there, he has been absolutely mobbed, Phil, just about 20-30 meters away from us here by an incredible group of media from the Belgian press. They're going absolutely out of their minds because they wanted this man to win last week, but he's come up with the goods and he's celebrated absolutely superbly here, making this his 3rd win at Paris-Roubaix.
And there he is, 10 fingers showing as he crosses the line. We look down now on the stadium. We can see in the distance the helicopter, and he's picked out the 2 riders who are being chased. They are still together here. Tom Boonen, the new boy, against Stefan Visser, who was 7th last year and had atrocious luck, now racing for a 2nd place, and without doubt his finest ever race as well. but he's going to have to take on an inspired Tom Boonen, the man that broke away after 31 kilometres, and now 230 kilometres later, he is going to claim second or third and mount the podium as well. And this a professional for a matter of months, and he's going to attack him, and I think he might be a good bike rider on the track.
He very well could be, 21 years of age, but it's going to be difficult. It's a hard sprint when you've been at the front of this bike race for so long. 6.5 hours in the saddle for these bike riders, and this is an unbelievable finish to a first Paris-Roubaix for Tom Boonen. The US Postal Service will have a man on the podium, but right now it's a question of, is it going to be second place or is it going to be third?
Well, Boonen's been manoeuvred into the lead here. Visser will be content with that. It takes, for a road cyclist, a little bit of nerve to ride the Bank Stadium here in Roubaix if you're not used to it. Now we'll see if Stefan Visser can do something special here. I think he can. He's not going to rush past Tom Boonen. He's going to leave him out there and wait. He's wisely looking over his shoulder across the track to see if anybody else is chasing in. There's no danger of that. And now Tom Boonen is going to have to lead out Stef Visser. It would have all been so different if we hadn't have had that problem on the pavé that saw George Hincapie crash spectacularly into the ditch, and Boonen was forced to ride on alone and leave his team captain behind. Now he's racing for a place he could never have dreamed of, a top 3 finish as Visser goes. Surely Boonen can't react to that. This man, though, is a huge star of the future as he chases Visser. He's not going to close. The legs just cracked. Stefan Visser comes into the home straight. The German gets second, and the mighty Tom Boonen takes third for US Postal.
Well, a brilliant ride there, but this young man, he had so much fatigue, but Stefan Visser, a little upset there with finishing in second position. It's only a dream of what could have been the situation, and Hincapie now, Phil, is onto the stadium as well, and he'll be looking to try and equal his 4th place of last year, but he's in a group of around about 8 riders, and I would think Hincapie is going to have to do something pretty special to try and get this one, because just in front of him there, in second place, is Lars Mikkelsen, who is a very good sprinter.
Well, let's hope George can get 4th here. It'll be the 3rd time he's finished 4th if he does, but he has raced so well today. He's promised more all day. Now he's got to take on Raphael Schroeder, leading out Lars Mikkelsen. Mikkelsen now goes. George is hooked up nicely onto the wheel. They'll come round for the bell this time. Tristan Hoffmann is in 3rd place as they come off the banking. 1 or 2 riders here are fancying their chances, and Mikkelsen is deciding he's going to have to go the whole way around the stadium. That is a long way to sprint, and George is going to have to take the others on as they come up towards the line here now. It is Tristan Hoffmann, Lars Mikkelsen, Hincapie, I think, on the line, but I'm not too sure. That'll go to the photo. But George, Paul, possibly a 6th place finish.
A little bit devastated, I think, by that as well, because he'd hoped, I think, for an awful long time that he was going to get himself onto the podium. Maybe just a bit too much pressure on his shoulders there coming into Paris-Roubaix, but I think he will take a lot of enjoyment out of the position of his teammate Tom Boonen, who will climb up into 3rd place at the end of this bike race.
I think you're right, Paul. That's exactly what the way George will feel. But he'll also feel great disappointment. And this man, he was about to become the first German ever, in fact, since year 1 of winning Paris-Roubaix 100 editions ago. My goodness me. Well, he didn't. He was second. A little wave there from the man from Belgium, who's become the new star with his performance today. And well done to Tom Boonen. That was a tremendous ride by him. Here's the sprint again.
Well, this you can see George Hincapie trying to get on terms with Lars Mikkelsen there, but I think George Hincapie, after that crash, went to pieces psychologically. He was hoping and dreaming of the big win today, but that wasn't to be. First man across the line there, in fact, was Tristan Hoffmann.
Yes, and Lars Mikkelsen. And George Hart not really in the sprint. He's been in these positions before. What he really wanted, of course, was a stand on the podium in 3rd place. US Postal, surprisingly, get their first man on the podium of a Paris-Roubaix. Not with the man they expected, but this is a big professional setup, and I suspect that they'll be happy enough with the result today. And Johan Museo. We now know that the 10 fingers mean I have won 10 World Cup races in my career, and he just goes on winning. Well, that's a tremendous result for Johan Museo. Now, let's go and join Tom Boonen and ask him the question. What is it like when you come into the stadium in front of a crowd like this?
It was unbelievable. I can't describe it. You know, I did this race 3 times as an amateur, and I did it 3 times in the first group, but when you hit the velodrome, there's like 50 people, and this is unbelievable. On the road, the people just shouted at my name, and they turned crazy, and then you hit the velodrome, there are like maybe 3,000, 4,000 people here, so that's crazy.
And with George Hincapie crashing in the ditch, well, Tom Boonen, he had to try and get the result.
Yeah, me and George was trying to get back to Museo, but Museo was unbelievable today. And then George crashed, and there were some guys coming back, so we couldn't wait for him. And I tried to take it a little bit easier, but I just had to go for it. And then Weseman came back, but in that moment I did 230 Ks in an attack today, like in the front, so it's normal. I'm a little bit tired now.
Congratulations, great race.
So a happy man, but what about Lars Mikkelsen? He was right up at the finish, but he in fact earlier on had been involved in a crash. What exactly happened to him?
What happened?
Well, we take a right-hand turn, and because of the spectators, I was a little bit surprised. I couldn't see what happened after the turn, and well, I crashed, and I had to change my bike, and I think my arm here is not very good condition. I had a hard time, but I was going good today, and well, luckily for me, I also finished up in top 10 because I thought at that moment everything was gone.
And a lot of teamwork as well.
That's true. Our team, Team Coast today, were all from the first section of paves in the front. We had Frank Hoy, we had Malte Urban, we had Stefan Adamson, and I mean, okay, we cannot be on the side like on same level like Domo, but it's still in a race like this that means a lot.
A different result without the crash?
For sure. I mean, at that time I had kept up with Weseman and with Hincapie, and I think with Hincapie and Weseman I still had the chance to go and not get Museo back, but still be second or third.
Thanks
Lars Mikkelsen there showing his Paris-Roubaix mud face pack as he now can go and have a good shower. Another man who rode well today and coming in late was Stefan Visser. Here was a rider who last year had a fair share of mechanical problems. This year seemingly came from absolutely nowhere. But I think, you know, he had a fair share of trouble yet again, didn't you, Steph?
I have a lot of problems today, but I feel so strong this morning, and I think I don't think about in the race. I just riding and just push the pedal.
Yeah. How'd you feel when you bridged the gap to Boonen?
The what?
When you caught Boonen, how did you feel when you caught
That's
Boonen?
what I say. I don't think in the race. I pass him. I just want to be on the first 3 here.
Great.
Thank you.
Stefan Visser then off to make his appearance on the podium in second place, Paul, but there's no doubt who the winner was. Emphatic, wasn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. This man took the race the way it's supposed to be taken. Paris-Roubaix over the last few years has turned out to be a race of absolute domination. And today, Johan Museo dominated Stefan Visser, an unlucky bike rider who may be a future winner of this race, a race that he certainly adores. But I reckon one man we do have to look out for, Phil, is this young 21-year-old from US Postal Service.
For not least, Tom Boonen. A little word there for Museo. Twinkly Museo's eye there. I'm sure he said, mate, you did a fantastic bike race today. So, confirmation of the top 3, Museo, Vesseman, Boonen, Tristan Hoffmann coming in 4th place, Lars Mikkelsen 5th, George Hincapie taking 6th. To complete the top 10, Thierry Gouvenou, Max van Heeswijk, Nico Matan and the battling Enrico Cassani. Look at that young face there, smiling to the crowd, standing alongside the line. And Stefan Visser wondering what might have been, because this is a rider, remember, no German has won this event since the very first edition 100 years ago. And I think that might serve to haunt Stefan, because he really wanted to win today. But he overcame his bad luck of last year, although he still had trouble in his own way. We'll leave you now with the sights and sounds of a brilliant 100th edition of Paris-Roubaix. Oh my goodness me, would you like to ride it? I think everybody would. At least they'd all like to win it. For Paul Sherwin, I'm saying goodbye for now. This is Phil Liggett. See you soon. Bye.